Welcome back, everyone. I'm going to do another Photoshop tutorial, and this Photoshop tutorial is sort of twofold. First of all, one aspect of what I'm trying to do is give my students a demo on a particular assignment. The assignment is creating a poster that illustrates 5 or 6 Photoshop filters. What you see here is the final product of what I am going to produce. Now, I'm not saying this is the most beautiful or whatever, but what I do want to show you is the goal of this particular assignment is to illustrate the various Photoshop filters that are available. Obviously, not all of them. And as you can see here, one of the things that I want to talk about is coming up with a title, how to lay out your different elements, how to line them up, and be very precise about how you line them up. I've got a lot of hacks and other things that we're going to look at, things like adding very subtle effects, like very subtle gradients, very subtle textures and noise, and how to use and pull colors right off of the photograph to make it look better. How to use the guidelines to be able to line everything up. So what we will do is we'll proceed to grab an image and start working with it. I'll show you how we do that now. Okay, so if you go to the Wikimedia Commons featured pictures, and you can Google it, there's many pictures of the day that are very nice photographs that you can use for your assignment. And you can categorize them. And a lot of my websites talk about this. So I'm just going to go pick one that I want to use for my Photoshop filter. Okay, I'm going to go with this particular picture. It's called Autumn Red Peaches. And if you go here, Wikimedia Commons, if you click more details, what you can do is you can get a variety of image resolutions. Now, one general guideline when you're making a poster, always err on the side of making it too big. Don't make it too small, if anything. If you make yours too small, it's a lot more difficult. You can't expand. Okay, so a 640 by 436 might be a good. A 320 by 218 could also be a good size. Either one of those should work. I'm going to use the 320, and I'm going to copy that image. I'm not going to save it. I'm just going to right-click and copy, because in Photoshop, I can paste it in. Now, I'm thinking of doing 2 rows with 3 columns. So I'm going to have 1 original and 5 different filters applied. Now, you can do more than that if you want. It depends on how you want to lay it out. So I'm going to use that knowing that this is 320 pixels wide. Since I know it's 320 pixels wide, what I'm going to do is create a document that's wide enough to account for that image on 3 different columns. So I'm going to click on presets. I'm going to go to web. And if you do 1600 by 1200, that 320 multiplied by 3, we're about 1,000. So if you want to, anywhere from 1280 or 1600 would probably work. I'm going to start with 1280, and I'm going to expand if I need to. I'm just going to click OK. And I'm just going to edit, paste it in. And immediately there's my image. I get my move tool, and I could probably put 3 side by side. So what I'm thinking of doing is just duplicating this layer. So let's just try it out. Duplicate, click OK, duplicate again. And now I've got 3 layers of the same image. So let's just kind of drag them out. And oops. Now probably a good idea is sort of organize these. Okay, at this point, 3 of them will fit side by side. And so I think this is going to be just fine. I can put another row under here. I can add my title. I'll have room for all of my titles here. So at this point, if I decided I need to adjust this, I can always change the canvas. And that's under layer, under image canvas size. So if I go to canvas size, I can change my width and height. So if I find I need to, I will do that. The other thing I want to do now is I want to sort of evenly space these images out. And here's the deal. Attention to detail is one of those things where if you do it right, people will not notice. If you do it wrong, people will notice. So doing this wrong would be more narrow here between these 2 than this one over here, right? Because the distance between each of these, I can tell that these are off, and it sort of calls attention to itself. if they were evenly spaced, I probably wouldn't even think about where they're lined up. And if you don't see that, then you might need to find someone who has a fine attention to detail, who can point it out. Or the better way to do this is I'm going to use a little visual element to sort of create this. So what I'm going to do is you're going to want to have rulers on. So I'm going to get my ruler out. It already has a ruler. If you don't, just go to View, and Control R will get you rulers. Okay. And then if you double click on the ruler, you can choose between pixels, inches, centimeters, etc. And pixels are good, so could percent. Percent might be nice if you want to make sure everything's in thirds. So you want to have the first 33% be one column, the next, etc. if you wanted to do it that way. I'm going to use pixels because everything is measured in pixels so far. And one of the things I'm going to do is figure out like how close these are apart. So it's nice to zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to try to get the distance here and come up with a general guideline and then adjust as necessary. So one of the things you can do when you have your ruler is you get the move tool, or any tool actually, and you can actually click on the ruler and drag it out and just sort of line it up. When you do that, you get a grid line, or a guideline, excuse me. You get a guideline here, and guidelines are only designed for when you are lining things up. You won't actually see it when you produce it. Let me demonstrate. If I click Save for Web and Devices, you will not see that blue line anymore. See, it's not there. So the blue line is just an editing technique for me to see what's going on. The other thing you're going to want is you're going to want to get info. You're going to want to get the info window available. F8 does that. I already have it open right here. If you don't have it open, go to Window, choose Info, or type the F8 key. And when you move over your cursor, you can sort of line it up, and you can check to see right now that has an X position of 418. Okay, so 418, and so I'm sorry, I have to adjust it just a little bit. When I let go, actually that says 421. I drag this one over here, and now that's 476. So we're looking at like about 55 pixels. So I'm thinking, what if we just put them 50 pixels apart? And you might be wondering, well, how do I get it exactly? Because it took a while just to get these grid lines here. Well, this is where we're going to do a hack. Okay, my hack here is to use the rectangular marquee tool. So you select it, figure out your general idea as to how far apart you want it. You choose rectangular marquee, and under style, you choose fixed style. You have normal, fixed ratio, fixed size. So when I do fixed size, I can change my width to 50. And then the height doesn't really matter at this point. And I just move my cursor right where the grid line is, and I click it. And now you can see my marquee. This grid line is not on that side of the marquee. So all I have to do is get my move tool and drag this so that it's right there on that line. Now, the other thing you want to make sure you have available is snap. This needs to be checked. If it's not checked, you could be off a little bit, and it's a little harder to get it exact. You might be off just a little bit there. But you turn snap on, and you drag it, and there, it just sort of snaps to it. Now that that's snapped, and we know this is exactly 50 apart, well, let's just double check. Let's move this here. We know that these two grid lines are 50 apart. So I can move this image to make sure it's lined up. I can use this one to make sure it's lined up. I click on this image, go out, go in until it sort of snaps. Click on the next layer, drag it away, drag it in. It sort of snaps to its place. The marquee is off, but you'll notice it wasn't lined up with the grids once I moved it anyway. Control D gets rid of it. And now I know for sure that these are exactly 50 pixels apart. So I can do the same thing to the other side. But before I go too much further, you might want to figure out how far apart these are. So I'm thinking, why don't we make this, it looks like we're almost to 100 pixels. So we're going to just readjust here. I'm going to click on here, change this width to 100. Click right at the edge of my screen. Get a new grid line, snap to the marquee. It looks like we're pretty good here. I move my cursor, check the info. That does say it's 99, unfortunately. So I'll drag it. Part of the problem, I think, is this image here. So I'm going to move that sort of out of the way for a moment. And now I'm going to get my marquee again, re-click everything. Get my grid line. Move it out till it snaps. Did you see what happened when it snapped? The X says 100. So now I know that's where I want it. Click on layer 1, snap to the grid. You'll also notice these up and down were a little bit off. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a guideline and drag it down. Let's go to about 200. Let go. Get my move tool. And now I can snap it to both guidelines. Click the next one, same thing, snapped. And now I can do the same to the final one here. Again, got to get the grid lines out. Now we know they're going to be exact. So we got our grid line here. I'm going to go back, get this to 50 pixels wide. Click on my guide. Drag one more guideline out over here. Click the last layer. Get my move tool. Move it down, up, so it's snapped. Control D gets rid of that. Let's zoom out and take a look. At this point, we'll do fit screen. Move this out of the way. These images are pretty much evenly from here to here to here. We are missing one last piece, and that is the right-hand margin equal with the left-hand margin? And the only way we're going to know that is to get our 100 pixel marquee. Change it to 100 pixels. Oh, we should also get a grid line right at this edge of the picture. Click right there. And now we have a little bit of extra space on the side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crop to that point. I click crop. I drag. It's a little bit slow. Now notice when I went to try to crop it, I'm going to have to hit escape. My little marquee disappeared. Okay, so I'm going to deselect that. I'm not going to crop. So we'll cancel that. Cancel the crop. I'm going to get this back. And then I'm going to click on here, and I'm going to do one last thing to sort of cheat this. Okay, the last thing I will do is get my marquee. Click right at the edge. And now I'm going to fill it with the color. And I'll just do it on I'll choose it on one of the other layers down here. Get my paint bucket. Fill it in with the color. Control D, deselect. Now the edge of this picture will serve as my sort of guideline for the crop. So now I get the crop tool out. Zoom up a little bit. Click on here. And I'm going to crop out to that line. Notice it sort of snapped to it. I'm going to go ahead and drag this all the way down. Double check my crop on the side. Should be right there. Press enter. And now I just want to delete that. I don't need that anymore. So I think I'll just get an eraser and make it big and erase it out. Okay. At this point, I use my guidelines. These are all evenly spaced. The next round, they should line up just nicely here. I think the next part we should do is start creating some of our labels, placing them in, and then adjusting to get our second row. We'll do that in the next video.